A lot of times the data that we receive is not in a suitable form. We have to do something to tidy it up. This next unit of the course is on wrangling. And chapter 9 is just an introductory section, and it talks about wrangling. Wrangling is something that all data scientists and data analysts need to do. They receive a data set and it's not in suitable format. There's missing data values, there's misspellings, there's lots of errors in the data. So the first thing we have to do is wrangle. And wrangle is kind of synonymous with tidying up the data or cleaning up the data. And in some cases, you have to transform the data a little bit to put the data in a format that you can then generate some wonderful visualizations. So in chapter 10, we're going to look at tibbles. And in chapter 11, we're going to look at how we would input data. And chapter 12 begins the whole tidy data package. And so we're going to start to clean the data there. We're going to get into specific data wrangling with relational data, chapter 13, with strings in chapter 14, with factors in chapter 15, and then we'll look at dealing with dates of various formats. But chapter 10 is all about tibbles, you know, those abbreviated tables that we've been printing out all along. Tibbles was a package that was created later because the original R data frame didn't provide a lot of it was clunky, it was slow, sometimes it would print the entire, data frame where really all we needed is just a short abbreviated data frame. And so this package Tibble was created, and that's what we're going to look at right now. All of these are data frames. If we were doing a pipe, then any one of these lines could serve as a data frame. Every one is a data frame. And so that could be the first line followed by the percent greater than percent. All right, for diamonds, you want to know what class it is. It's a data frame. All of these are data frames. So this one, notice it's one of the more, it could be used as a data frame or a Tibble or TBL._data frame. So that's three different data frames. So all three work here. X is also the same. Y is the filtered set, same thing. But there are data sets. So for example, MT cars, the car data. And when we look at the class of MT cars, notice that that's the old version in R. It's only a data frame. So it's not a Tibble as of yet. You can get some information about Tibbles over here in the output window, all kinds of information on the Tibble. I encourage you to read that. We're going to be using the Tidyverse package, so we should probably load that. And then the first thing we're going to do is to create some Tibbles. If you type in Iris, which is a data set there, you can see that it has 150 rows of certain flowers, irises. So when you print out the Iris data set, you'll see that it prints a data frame of all 150 rows. To look at the class, yes, this is a data frame. Now, if you wanted to, for these old files like this, if you want to create them, see a Tibble, there's a command that you can give as Tibble, and it'll change that data frame where it prints out the entire 150 rows. It'll only print out the first 10 and say that 140 are left. This is the Tibble version that we have used a lot. You can create a Tibble. For example, this one here is X takes on the values 1 through 5, Y is always 1, and Z is a formula that uses X and Y. And because you have X, Y, and Z on the left with equal signs, those are going to be your column headings. It creates a 5x3 Tibble. The X values are 1 through 5, the Y values are always 1, and then the Z value takes the X value, squares it, 5 squared plus the Y value. Key features about the Tibble that you probably are aware of, it never changes the type of the inputs. Sometimes in the data frame, it would automatically change the data type from strings to factors, for example. The Tibble's never going to do that. It's never going to change the names of the variables, and it's never going to list the row names. So here is a TB, a new data frame that we are creating, and they're just emphasizing here that the piece on the left, if it's a character, you have to put it in those backticks, then equals, then the data value listed there would be those three words, smile, space, and number, so that when we run the assignment statement, then print the frame, you'll see that we have the command, and then it gives us a Tibble. These are the column headings. Those are to the left of the equal sign inside the Tibble, and then these are the three different values that we specified in our made up tibble. And notice the tibble always reports the type of variable, whereas the data frame does not. The data frame does not. And if you use a tribble, which is a version of a tibble, and you'll notice that in this tribble that this line 116 is added, it starts with a pound sign. So this is a comment, doesn't read it, but it's useful for you to do that so you separate the header from the actual data. So when you run this tibble, then you see the comment doesn't go in there, but it does classify X, Y, and Z. So what's the difference between the tibble and the data frame? So there's printing and subsetting. So how do you create subsets? First, printing. Tibbles only shows the first 10 rows, and each column, the data type is reported. So you've got this tibble, you've got these 5 different variables. And if we run this tibble, let's see what happens. It looks like we have the first 10 rows of a file that contains, it looks like a date. The first field is DTTM, that's a date timestamp. And the next field is just the date. And then you have this integer, this is 1 through 10. So this might be the record number. And then this E, which takes a sample of letters. So there you see it. You've got the 5 columns, A, B, C, D. A is a date timestamp. B is a date. C is an integer. D is a real number, doubles, and E is a character. So this is one of the features that you see in tibbles that you won't see in the data frame. Now, in cases where you might need more lines of code than just the 10, the default for a tibble is 10. If you need to see more than that, then you can specify. So remember that flights data, that's 337,000 flights, a lot of flights. We certainly don't want to see that whole table. And the width is INF, which means infinity, give me all you can. So if we wanted to print 20 rows instead of just the 10, we could change 10 to 20 and actually get the 20 rows. The width equals INF, capital I, means that it's going to print all of the columns and 20 rows. There are some options for printing as well that you can throw into that print command. Package tibble, get some documentation on those simple data frames in tibble. You can see all this information. It has lots of information, more so than we could demonstrate in one session. And I think we've practiced with View as well. So we have just print a data frame, and usually it's a tibble. And if it is a data frame, it's going to print the whole data frame. If it's not a data frame from the old R, it'll print a tibble, which is 10. And if you ever want to view the entire data set, just do the view command and you can see it. And this thing would go on, forever. You'd have to scroll down a long way to see the entire data set. Now, in addition to printing, subsetting is another big difference between the data frames and the tibbles. So you might want to extract a subset of the data. The syntax that we use for that, for the data frames, is a little bit different than for tibbles. So here is our data frame, tibble, and this looks like it's doing a random number of some sort. So sometimes positive, sometimes negative, and we want 5 different numbers. So there is our tibble, and if we want to extract by name, we can just say, we can call the data frame, and we can say, give me X only. You can see here are the X values. This is a real number, a doubles. And when I ask it to only extract X, it extracts X and prints all these values, not rounded, prints all of them in one row. If you want to extract by position, you can see there's the first position, the first column, and then here is the second column. You can extract the data that way. If you were going to use this in a pipe, then you could use the decimal point as a special placeholder. So in a pipe, since we declare the data frame as our first step, everything that comes after is understood to be using that data frame, but we have to specify it anyway if we want to call a specific variable. So this is the decimal point, which is used to refer to the data frame. So data frame $X gives us the X values. Another way to do it would be data frame with the dot. To replace the $X, we can put double quotes around X. And we get the same thing. If you want to just extract the first column, there's another one. If you want to extract the second one, you can extract the second one using a pipe in that way. A TB is a tibble. and as data frame converts it into a data frame. If you take the class of something you just converted to a data frame, well, it's going to be a data frame. Okay, just another word about subsetting. When we want subsets of our data, a lot of times we're going to be using those dplyr functions. We're going to be filtering out, we're going to be sorting, arranging, and so on. So a lot of times we're not going to use these, but we may in the future. So therefore, that's why you get an introduction to them today. And here are a couple of exercises. How can you tell if an object is a Tibble? One of the things you can do is if you just run this, you'll see that it gives you not just 10, but it gives you the entire data set. The other thing is it does not report the variable type up here at the top, whereas a Tibble does. If you convert mtcars to a Tibble and run this, notice that you do have a Tibble because you only have 10 rows and you have the variable name, declaring all of these as real numbers. There is a function called isTibble. If you wanted to know, is mtcars a Tibble using the newer version of a data frame, or is it the old data frame? And you can just ask this, is it a Tibble? That one is not, so it's going to say false. But you can see that diamonds and flights, and if we convert mtcars to a Tibble and then ask is Tibble, then it's going to be true. A couple uses. All right, so if you run the class of mtcars, you get data frame. If you run the class of MPG, you get the newer version of the Tibble. Diamonds is a Tibble. New York Flights is a Tibble. All right, so here's a problem that illustrates how we extract things out of a Tibble or a data frame. And so we declare the data frame, and this is what it looks like. It's a very, very small file. It's got a title ABC, one element in there, and the title ABC, the column title XYZ has just the character A in it. What class is it? It's a data frame because we declared it to be such. And you give the data frame and then $X. $X means anything starting with X. List those columns. And so the only thing that begins with X is the XYZ, so it prints A. This next one is very similar. It says print the data frame and anything that has a column that begins XYZ. And the next one, print the data frame, anything that begins either ABC or XYZ. We're going to define that data frame up there as a Tibble and do the same thing. We define it as Tibble, and when we print it off, you can see it prints it off as the whole table with the variable types listed at the top. Now, for this one, it does not seem to work. We can't use the $sign in this case with a Tibble. It just does not work. So sometimes the old version, the data frame syntax works, and sometimes the Tibble works, but generally we're going to be using Tibbles. This one, however, it does find, and this one it does find. This mtcars has these 11 variables, and it has 32 observations. So it's not a very big data set. And if you check out the class, you can see it's a data frame. It'll print the entire list of cylinders, CYL. Notice the other way to do that is to use the brackets, and then you can print multiple columns if you'd like. But as before, it's going to give you all 32 vehicles. All right, now let's do the same keystrokes, but let's declare the mtcars. It used to be a data frame in the old version of R. Let's declare it as a Tibble, we do with this assignment statement. Then when we look at the class, you can see that it's a Tibble. And if we use the Tibble command to just list the cylinders, it lists them in a table going vertical, and it lists the real number doubles character variable type. And then this one will print the two columns, both the cylinder and the horsepower. Yeah, so if you declare the column headings, the column variable names as being characters themselves, you need to put those backticks in front of them. So here is a Tibble where we define a column 1 and a column 2, and column 1 prints the numbers 1 through 10, and then we have some kind of random number generator there. So when we print this out, you can see that there are 10 different entries in this Tibble. They report the heading 1 and the heading 2, and they're integers and real numbers. So if we want to extract the variable called 1, that's the first column. There it is. If you want to use the $sign here, you have to put the 1 in quotes, otherwise it wouldn't understand it. Since you have two numerical variables, you can draw a scatter plot with those two variables. You can see variable 1 on the x-axis, variable 2 on the y-axis. Quick scatter plot. All right, there's lots of different Tibble functions, and n-frame is one of them. What does it do? It converts named vectors. Okay, so C is our named vector, and it converts it to a data frame with names and values. So you can see vector to table. Very nice. This might be useful for us later on.